G'day Bomber fans. There is a lot going on right now, a lot that I'm sure many do not care about right at the moment, but it is set to play a massive part in our draft strategy for 2024 and for the future. And if it eventuates, it could bring us that elite small forward that we've been calling out for years, and for free as well. This is a massive moment for pretty much the AFL, but mostly Essendon. Academy rules could well be changing in 2024, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about these big changes and what it could mean for our club. Also, before I start, quick shout out to Charlie Dons on Twitter. The name will be in the description below. You would see that I use these high quality training photos in my videos a lot. They're all from that account. They post regularly. Great content, so go give them a follow. Alrighty, so to explain this rule change, we need to go back to the start. The NGA academies, every club has one. Clubs have these zones around Australia where they have access to young up-and-coming footballers. We have one in Victoria and one in the Northern Territory. Players from these academies can train with the club that they're linked with. They can play in the Coach Talent League, pretty much get a leg up in building their AFL career. And as it stands right now, clubs barely have access to these players in the national draft. I'll explain why that is in a second, but if an academy kid is available in the draft and a club wants to take them, the linked club can only match a bid and select the player if it comes after pick 40. So think back to Luman Lawal, who we just drafted. He's part of the Western Bulldogs Academy. We picked him with pick 38, and the Bulldogs could do nothing about that. They couldn't match a bid because it wasn't after pick 40. They just had to wave goodbye. There was nothing they could do because of how tight these NGA restrictions are, and that's been the case for a lot of clubs. Think back to Mac Andrew, who was part of Melbourne's academy. But the AFL briefed clubs on Tuesday this week with proposed changes, the main one being the loosening of these NGA restrictions. This was always on the cards. It was always going to change. The AFL are set to scrap these restrictions and make it so clubs can match bids on their academy players at any stage of the draft. This is obviously a big change in the rules, but the AFL proposed that these changes come into place effective immediately, in time for the 2024 draft. And if you aren't familiar with the draft, all you need to know is that this change would give us access to arguably the best small forward available in Isaac Kako. Now, these changes are not finalised. The AFL Commission still needs to meet in August, so we will not know until then if we definitely have access to our academy player Kako or not. But the fact it is proposed, that means it is now more likely than not for these changes to go ahead. This is massive news for the AFL, massive news for the club. I'm going to talk about why that is in a second, but first I want to just talk about the changes in the context of the league as a whole, taking my Essendon hat off for a second. Alright, so the restrictions that are currently in place now as we speak, not the ones that are set to be introduced, these would mean that we wouldn't get access to Kako if a club bids on him before pick 40, which is just going to happen. These restrictions came in for a reason. The Bulldogs were able to exploit the system back in 2020 when they drafted Jamara Ugle-Hagan with pick 1, matching Adelaide's bid for him. It was controversial. Clubs hated that scenario, so the AFL changed the rules. Maybe they went too far, or they definitely went too far. They eventually made the academies worthless for a few years with the pick 40 restrictions that are currently in place. Although, these restrictions did not count for Rugby States, Gold Coast, GWS, Brisbane and Sydney. Those clubs can match bids on academy players at any stage of the draft, and this caused even more controversy last year when Gold Coast were able to get 3 of the very best players in the 2023 draft for essentially free, and they kept their draft hand strong in the future because of it. It's really easy to exploit the draft if you have players that you know you can match a bid on. It's the same with father-son. That is the issue with the academy setup. This rule change would revert that could come into place would ensure that there would be more drafts like this where clubs can trade away their hand to get capital to match another bid. What Essendon can do now is trade away pick 13 or 15, whatever we have, get capital from it to match on Kako when it comes, but also strengthen the hand later. It pretty much turns into a freebie, which is never good for fairness, and on top of that, it puts the Rugby States at a further disadvantage again. It's hard enough for them to get access to talent because there simply put isn't much talent in those areas for the most part, but think of Gold Coast and GWS now, who don't really have a father-son system in place either. They are now back to having less ways to access good young players, and I don't know if it's fair to be doing that to younger clubs. Obviously, we can't complain as Essendon fans, but the Victorian bias here wins again. I don't know what the AFL can really do, though, to make it fair as a whole. It's at a stage where whatever is done will hurt one side and please the other, so I guess the change pleases the masses, which results in less outcry. I just thought I would raise this point before getting hyped about our situation, just because there is a lot of positivity, and I wanted to speak on behalf of the clubs that may feel a little hard done by. Alright, as for us, if this rule change comes into effect this year, which it is looking likely to do, we will have access to Isaac Kako, and this guy is electric. He is such an exciting footballer. He was a top 20 or 25 pick to start the year, many believed, but his recent form, I heard this news of a possible rule change and it felt like a trade to me. Isaac Kako is exactly the type of player we've been calling out for. I genuinely think if he was on our list right now, he would be playing regularly. We've been calling out for a damaging, exciting small forward for years. Isaac Kako is that player. He's 175 centimeters tall, super fast, lightning fast. He can push up the ground to impact higher up the field, but his work around the sticks, he is always involved. I look at someone like Nick Watson, someone who gets lots of chances but doesn't always necessarily take them. Kako gives off those vibes. He may not always score bags of goals, but he always gets looks, and that's exactly what you want to look out for in a young player. Efficiency improves with age. It's that desire that you need to look out for, and those smarts to get the ball in good areas. That's what you need to look out for. In the Talent League this year, he's scored 15 goals, 23 from his 9 matches. That is 38 scores from 9 games. That is absurd. In the Under-18 Champs Carnival, he kicked 8 goals, 3 for Vic Metro from 4 games. He hasn't had a scoreless game this year across the Talent League and Champs. He is a serious player. He's highly rated. I'm not just hyping him up because I'm an Essendon fan. I had him outside the top 20 in my draft power rankings last month. In that time, he starred and got inside it, and Cal Toomey has him 15th. Don't listen to me. Listen to Cal Toomey. That guy's a draft expert, and he ranks Kako as the 15th best player in the open market. For small forwards, that is golden, and we may now have access to him for free pretty much. It could be a huge win for the club. We would be by far and away the biggest winners of this rule change if it came to be. So what happens if the rules change? How do we get Kako? All we need to really do is match a bid and ensure we have enough draft capital to match that bid when it comes. Draft picks are worth points. They have value. The higher the pick, the higher the points value. There are websites that you can calculate pick value with, but our pick 15 right now, that is the same worth as picks 30 and 35 banded together. So what clubs usually do in the draft when they have an academy player is one or two things. They either trade away their current pick and or pick 15 for us and get lots of smaller ones. That way they can match the bid with capital later on, but stay active later as well to bring multiple players in. It's kind of like a freebie, if you will. You can still, in a way, use that early pick because you're getting the academy player. You're essentially using pick 15 to get him, but you don't lose out later on. You can still be active. Or you can trade up the draft. You can select a player before your academy pick, because if we were to keep pick 15 and a club comes in before to bid on Kako, we would have to use pick 15 as capital. It would be a wasted selection. So what we could do is trade pick 15 and get something else for an earlier pick inside the top 10 before Kako is bidded on. That way we would not only have access to Kako, but another quality draftee as well. Now this is easier said than done though. We only hold 3 picks in the draft, so trading up would be very hard unless we offload a player or future selections. But it shows you what is possible and what Rosa and his crew will be thinking about over the next few months if this change comes into effect. What is also going to be interesting is the fact that we are going heavy in the trade period for a forward right now. Ben Ainsworth is reportedly hot on our radar. We supposedly are offering a 5-year deal to him. Would this change our plans though? Would we really be bringing in Ainsworth and Kako after getting Gresham the year before? And if that is the case, what does it mean for guys like Menzies and the Davey twins? We cannot have Kako, Ainsworth, Gresham, Guelphy, Menzies, Davey Jr., Tex Wanganin. We can't have them all on our list. That would be absurd list management. So this rule change would not only be fantastic for the club for the future, but it could also spell the end of either our approach towards Ben Ainsworth, who we're trying to lure in, but also the end to some young fringe forwards who have struggled to prove themselves early into their career. It is brutal, but Kako would be miles ahead of the Davies and Menzies. Guelphy, I don't know yet, probably not, but he would leapfrog a few players and keep them in the VFL. Does that mean it is worth a look at ending their careers? It's hard to say. There would be some worried members of our team right now though. That is all though. Quick update, great update, or potentially great update. The lid is not off yet, but it's certainly getting there. This rule change would be massive for the club. Remember, nothing is confirmed yet. We still have the commission meeting next month. I'll have my VFL review out tomorrow. I'm uploading it a bit late because of this news. Thought I would get this out while it's still being talked about. Also, again, cheers to Charlie Dons on Twitter for posting these training photos regularly. Give them a follow. They do a great job. Like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new, and go Bombers.